Greetings, my friends, and welcome to another of my realistic railway recreations made with Transport Fever 2. Today we're in the lovely countryside of South Warwickshire, and this is Alcester, a small town midway between Redditch and Stratford-on-Avon. I've modelled it as it was in the opening years of the 20th century, when its railway station was an important stop on one line, the Midland Railway route from Barnt Green to Evesham, and the terminus for another, the Alcester branch. In this video we shall be travelling on the Alcester branch. I have a personal interest in this line, and I'll explain why a little later on. To understand the railways in these parts, it is helpful to look at the history. This is South Warwickshire, and before 1860 there was no railways at all running through this area, just the Great Western on the edge running from Oxford to Birmingham. In 1860, Great Western Railway built a link from Stratford-on-Avon to join its existing Birmingham to Oxford route at Hatton Junction, and it went near but not through the little village of Bearley, where there was a station. In the mid-1860s, the Midland Railway built its line from Barnt Green, from which there were connections all over the West Midlands, running south, following the valley of the River Arrow, through Alcester, where they built a main station, and on to Evesham. It then seemed fairly obvious that perhaps there could be a link between these two railways, which would bring some of the more isolated villages into the network. And in 1876, Great Western opened the Alcester branch, which went through the village of Great Alne, where there was a station, and connected to the station at Bearley. There were no other stops on this line when it was first built, and it was only built as a single track railway, as indeed was the Midland Railway, so they never expected a great deal of traffic. In 1905, a more direct route was built from Stratford to Birmingham. It ran up towards Bearley but didn't actually get to the station. It then used some of the tracks of the Alcester branch before diverging northward on its more or less straight line northward. Finally, the present day, well, the Great Western lines to the east are still there, but the Alcester branch vanished in 1951, and the Midland Railway didn't last very much longer. So the central part of Warwickshire has reverted to having no railways. We're at Bearley Station, and we're about to get into the cab of our GWR service to Alcester. Like many of the other branch stations, Bearley had a small goods shed and a cattle pen and a couple of sidings. Here the lines to Stratford veer off to the left, and our line becomes the single track Alcester branch. Shakespeare line, also known as the North Warwickshire line, now joins us coming in from the left. ahead of us the Edstone Viaduct, which carries the Stratford-on-Avon Canal over the railways, as well as a road and a small river. But the canal was here first. It was built in 1816, and the railways had to manoeuvre around the supports, which is why if you look at the main line, which is about to leave us on the right, you'll see that their two tracks are quite widely separated. This is the longest canal viaduct in England. Nothing like as long as the big one in Wales, the Ponsilite, but nevertheless the longest in England, and it was made of cast iron, which was a fairly new technique, and it's still in use. Over to our right, we are still parallel with the tracks of the North Warwickshire line, but it's about to curve off northward, and we are about to curve off westward. The Ordnance Survey map that I use, hosted very generously by the National Library of Scotland and revised around about 1900, shows the area to our left as being some sort of plantation, but I'm not really sure what they were growing there. There are lots of drainage ditches in this part of the world. I've put a few of them in. There's one on the right. The village of Little Alne is across to our right, and we're passing under the bridge that carries the road from Little Alne to Aston Cantlow. Aston Cantlow was actually built in 1922 after the railway reopened following the First World War, but they only built it as a halt, and it had very limited facilities, just a hut on the platform and a storage hut made of corrugated iron at one end. The Ordnance Survey map shows a gravel pit to our left. I don't know whether it was active during the 1920s, which is when I set this recreation, but I've assume that there might have been some work there. And to our left, the village of Aston Cantlow. There were many watermills on the River Alne and on the River Arrow, and there's one of them on the left. This is a minor road which leads down towards Aston Cantlow and runs straight into the river. So there was a ford there, and there still is today, and it's pretty well impassable for motor vehicles. The bridge that we are passing under no longer exists, and in the field to our right there's now a large electrical substation. During the First World War, the railway was closed and indeed the tracks were taken up to be used for military purposes, but it reopened after the war and somehow managed to struggle on until the Second World War, when it closed again. However, it gained a new lease of life when at the end of 1940 the Maudsley Manufacturing Company from Coventry moved their factory to Great Alne, and the railway was used to bring in the workers from Coventry. Here's another water-driven corn mill. This one is Great Alne, and the building is still there today, but it's now residential apartments. We're coming up to Spencer's Crossing, one of just two level crossings on the Ulster branch line. There was a small cottage here, and for many years a widow with her children lived there, and I've placed her here by the gates. Great Alne had a single siding and a single platform, but a rather nice station house and some other buildings attached. The area of woodland to our left was purchased by the villagers of Great Alne after the railway disappeared, and it's now managed by the Woodland Trust. The main road here from Great Alne south in the general direction of Stratford crosses the River Alne. In the 1920s there was a ford, so I have shown both a motor vehicle and a horse and cart trying to negotiate it. Today we have a bridge. Walking back up the road, in the distance we can see the pub called the Mother Huffcap, which is still there today. We'll take to the airs and just fly over the village, Church of St Mary Magdalene and Manor House on our left, and this is Great Alne Park. This is where Maudsley Manufacturing set up their factory when they moved here during the war, making military vehicles, and then for many years afterwards commercial vehicles and motor components. I said at the start of this video that I had a personal interest, and the reason is that I now live in a new retirement village that has been built on the site of the old Maudsley factory. Let's get back into the train. But before we do that, a quick then and now comparison. To our left, the hamlet of Kinnerton. Across the main road from Great Orme to Alcester on quite a large high girder bridge. This bridge carries the railway over Kinnerton Farm Road, which really was a farm road in the 1920s, but today all of the land that we now see on the right is industrial estate, right up to the cornfields, and on the left it's all housing estates. And we can get a glimpse now of Alcester across the fields. There were a lot of factories there, and probably a lot more smoke than I have shown. This is the girder bridge that takes the railway over the River Arrow, and another mill, Ragley Mill, tapping the power of the water there. The bridge is still there. I gather. I've seen a recent photograph of it, haven't seen it myself. This is the bridge that carries the main road to Birmingham over the railway. And here's where the Alcester branch line now joins the Midland Railway. There was a single engine shed because there was only one engine used every day on the Alcester branch. The station was jointly owned or jointly managed with the Midland Railway. I think the Midland Railway owned it, and the Great Western Railway paid, I've read somewhere, £150 a year to rent usage of it. Almshouses across the fields, and you can see the very large factory, which is the Minerva Needleworks, just behind the Midland Railway goods shed. And that building, Minerva factory, is still there, although they don't make needles anymore. Had a very large cattle pen by the station, in addition to the substantial cattle pens in the market in the centre of the town. And that's the end of our journey on the Alcester branch. I do hope you've enjoyed it. Please give me a like or leave me a nice comment if you've enjoyed this video. Thank you very much.